Welcome to Rover Says, the podcast where we share stories about the weird and wonderful things animals say when they open up to pet psychics. I'm your host, Nancy Aziz.
Tell me your favorite thing about Spencer.
Oh my God. He is like a dog. He is one of those, he's the only cat I've ever had that when the doorbell rings, he goes running to it instead of away from it. And he's always at my side. And yeah, he's like a dog. And I think the second favorite thing, even though you didn't ask me, is that he does what I call the silent or soft cry. Like I'll look at him and he'll just open his mouth and shut his mouth, just like he made a meow, but he didn't make any sound. And I'm just like, my God, he's just so cute.
That's Julie Scott talking about her 12-year-old cat, Spencer.
How did he come to you? Where did you find him?
Well, he and his brother, because I have the two boys, Spencer Tracy and Sydney Portier, because Spencer is white and Sydney is black. And I got them from a good friend who had a stray cat show up at their house and have two kittens right behind their guest house. And the cat that was the stray that had the kittens, the mother of my cats, was only 5 or 6 months old when she had them. So she was very, very young. And they took her into their guest house and kept her and the kittens for about 3 months before they started telling people about them. And that's how I got them. I got them from that litter. I took the whole litter.
And tell me a little bit about Sydney. What's he like?
Sydney is the typical cat. I mean, he is not as up in your face as Spencer. He does not follow you around. You come to him, he has to sniff you before you can touch him. But he's very friendly and very loving as well once he gets to know you. But he's the typical aloof cat. But he's also a lover once he gets to know you. So, and he's a big boy. He's about 22 pounds. He's got long hair. He's not fat. He just is a big cat.
That
And
is
he's probably got about 4 pounds on his brother, but Spencer is the white one. He runs them though. He's the alpha cat. Spencer's the alpha cat, and Sydney cowers to him, even though he's so much bigger.
no. So how many years have you had them?
12, 12
Wow,
years. Yep,
12 years. Oh, they sound like lucky kitties.
they are.
Julie had the brothers for less than a year when she noticed something strange started happening. She had a habit of hanging the tank top she wore to bed on the doorknob of her bathroom. Then one day, she noticed it had a big hole in it.
In the side of it, like the hole seemed like maybe a 3-inch wide hole in the side of my tank top. And I thought, what in the world happened? And I studied it and I was looking at the edges of it and I could tell it was bitten, had been chewed, and it was kind of crunchy from spit, right?
Oh.
And I was like, who did this? And so I knew it was one of the cats, but I didn't know which one. So it was a complete mystery for several weeks until one night while I was laying in bed, I heard this really strange noise, like a "Arr, arr, arr." And I'm like, what is, I mean, I couldn't make any connection to whatever that was. I'm like, what is that? So I sit up, turn on the light, and there's Spencer on the bed chewing on the throw blanket that was at the bottom of our bed. And so I realized it was him. And I'm like, what are you doing? So I shoot him off the bed and looked at the blanket, and sure enough, he had chewed a hole in that, and he was actually eating the fabric.
Oh, so
I was
he's not
shocked.
not just ripping it and spitting it out, actually swallowing this.
Yeah, he's eating it like full on, like chowing down on all sorts of different things. Mostly my clothing, but he would also on occasion get a hold of something of my partner's, of Paul's, and chew on that as well. But mostly my clothing he would chew on. And then it moved into other things in the house over the years. And I got to tell you, I did research on this, and it's something called pica,
Mm-hmm.
and some cats have it and they don't know why. And so, everything I could research, they were just like, oh, we'll just keep fabric away from him. I thought, yeah, that's easy. I mean, even like he would chew the corners of pillows, any throw or any blanket I had. Luckily, he didn't chew the corner or anything of the couch, but he would chew the corner of the pillows on the couch. So, and then he moved into chewing on drapes and other things. And it has just been, it was really, really hard to, put up with. And luckily, he's like such an awesome cat. Otherwise, I think I would have killed him.
Now I know you're only joking.
I'm only joking.
Spencer chewed on a lot of things in Julie's home, but once he discovered the drapes, that was his thing. In particular, he focused his energy on the two right-hand panels of the drapes that hung in Julie's bedroom.
And so every 3 or 4 months, I would just have to replace a whole panel. I mean, he isn't eating it all the way up to the top, obviously, but maybe, 6 or 8 inches of the bottom would be shredded and gone in patches. And I mean, it just looked like somebody had put it through some sort of a shredding machine, and it was embarrassing to have that in my house. And so luckily I didn't have a lot of people. I didn't show it to a lot of people, and I didn't see it, but I had to go and every, several months go and buy a couple new panels of drapes. And luckily at the time, the store I bought them from carried the same one, and so I could match the left side. But then they eventually discontinued those drapes, and I had to buy all new drapes one time. In fact, the last time. So it was not fun.
And it was getting expensive, too, about $100 every time Julie had to buy replacements.
And did he ever end up in the vet because of this? Did it bother him in any
Yes.
way?
Yeah. What ended up happening, those boutique bags that have a braided, uh, like cloth braided handle, maybe
Yeah.
like a black braided handle. So it was fabric of a sort, but probably just nylon or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
He got a hold of one of those years ago, and I didn't know it, but he started throwing up. He stopped eating. He wasn't grooming himself. He was just really sick. And so I took him into the vet, and I told them, and I figured out that he had gotten a hold of the bag because I found it under my bed, and the handle was partially eaten. And I thought, oh my goodness, if he's got that in him, what might that do to his, intestinal tract, or what if gets caught in there, or, I don't know what's
Yeah.
going to happen. So I took him to the vet and explained it to them. And of course, they did some x-rays and ran up a few tests and things. And I don't know, $800 later, they're like, well, we think he'll probably pass it, but we'll just give him some anti-vomit medication right now and just hopefully he'll pass it. And I'm like, okay. So the next 24 hours were really touch and go with him. And then he finally did pass it
Yeah.
and he was fine. But, that just made my life so much more scary with him with this condition. And
Yeah.
so I really became even more aware of the things that I had in my house because of him. So
Mm-hmm.
it's been really what a journey with him with this whole, you know, disorder, I guess that you'd call it that he has.
Yeah. Now, did the vet offer you any advice as to how you could prevent Spencer from chewing on things?
Well, they did give me some ideas about like spraying certain things with like maybe a vinegar and water solution as long as it wouldn't discolor something.
Yeah.
I could try that. And I tried that with a lot of different things. And apparently he likes vinegar as well. Because he chewed through those things also and just I don't know, and maybe it just evaporated enough where it didn't bother him. But yeah, they really didn't have any advice for me other than things like that. There was no calming thing. I mean, there wasn't any, they didn't suggest anything really to stop him from doing it because they really didn't know much about it. So I
Wow.
really kind of was lost.
You had searched online, you talked to your vet, and then what did you do next?
I just gave up and I thought, this is how my life is going to be. I
Hmm.
have this cat. He has this condition, so it is what it is. You know how you just kind of decide, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
I've got a weird cat, but he's awesome at the same time. So I kind of just gave up on it. And it wasn't until I heard a woman speaking, who we're going to talk about here, that I actually had a glimmer of hope after several years, a good 11 years of putting up with this. It's been, yeah, 11
Wow.
years. That's how long.
Wow. So tell me who this person is and what did she do for you?
Well, her name is Frances Greenspan, and she's
Hmm.
just a lovely person. I heard her speaking at a breakfast. It was a networking breakfast that we were both at.
Hmm.
And she stood up and shared what she did. And she said that she was an animal communicator and that she could communicate with our pets, the ones that were still here and the ones that had passed on. And she shared a little bit more detail around, some of the things that she helped with her other clients that she'd worked with. And it really piqued my curiosity. At the same time, I was doubting it. I'm not going to lie, because I thought, that sounds cool. Wouldn't that be great? I wonder if she could help me with Spencer, but then I thought immediately, probably not.
Yeah.
But after the breakfast was over, I pulled her aside and I said, I have an issue with my cat, and I'm wondering if this is something that you might be able to help me with. And she says, yes, I think I can.
Here's animal communicator Frances Greenspan.
She showed me the drapes, and they were decoratively eaten, like the entire fringe, not in any order, but absolutely demolished.
Frances has helped a lot of animals and their people work through all kinds of unwanted behaviors.
How often do you get issues with animals who are eating something strange, doing something strange, that kind of thing?
It's actually pretty often. My clients are all different types of animals and in different stages of their life, many times rescues, and rescues tend to have their own idiosyncrasies based on what their first family or first mother wanted, what the requests were, and just little things that they would do with them, as opposed to what this family wants them to do.
No matter the problem, Frances says she approaches it much the same way. She'll get the name of the animal and a picture, which she then uses to telepathically connect with the animal.
So
Right.
describe that whole process to me.
Well, before the appointment, usually a couple hours before, I'll tune in and speak telepathically with the pet. And then I type out the questions and answers, basically our conversation. And then I read it to the client, and then the client has a chance to ask questions or add to it or anything else that comes up.
Hmm.
So it's initially telepathic, and then at the appointment, we go from there. And this works with phone, Zoom, in person,
Okay.
however the client wants it.
In this case, Frances went to Julie's home, and Julie describes what happened next.
Let me just
Yeah.
tell you what happened while she was here, because this is the most amazing part of the story, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
So the doorbell rings. Francis is at my door. And of course, Spencer runs to the front door like he always does. And she comes in, he sniffs her like crazy. And then she sits down on my couch, and I sit on the other couch. And he gets up on the coffee table and sits directly in front of her, facing her. And I'm off to his right. And I've never seen him ever do that. I mean, he's gotten on the coffee table, of course, he gets on everything, but sitting right in front of a perfect stranger
Yeah.
and staring at her. Okay. So I was like, whatever, this is just happening. Okay, I'm gonna go with it.
What,
And so I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you. So what did that tell you initially when you're seeing your cat do this? What do you think was happening there? And why
Well,
was he
I
doing
wasn't
that?
really sure, but I thought because of what I had already read that she
Hmm.
had sent me, obviously he knows her now. So he has some sort of a connection with Frances.
Yeah.
And he's showing it by sitting so close to her right the first time she's come to our house, right?
Yeah.
And so she says, do you have your questions ready for I can ask Spencer some other questions while I'm here? And I said, yes, yes, yes. So I pulled out my list of questions
Hmm.
and I asked her the first question, and she nodded her head yes, and then she bowed her head down and closed her eyes, and she was, I guess, connecting with him. And then I noticed that Spencer looked down and then off to the right, like he was just staring off in the distance. And then when she brought her head up, he brought his head up, and she answered the question. And I was like, okay, that's just a coincidence.
Hmm.
And so I asked two more questions, and the same exact thing happened. She bowed her head, he bowed his head, looked off to the side while she was, communicating, I guess, with him. And then she came, lifted her head, he lifted his head. And I was like, what is going on? It was crazy. And I
Yeah.
said to her, I go, Frances, the weirdest thing is happening when you bow your head. And she interrupted me. She goes, he bows his head too. And I said, yes. She goes, that happens with all the animals. They stare off to the distance when I'm communicating with them. And I just got chills all over my body. I was like, that is so amazing. I mean, and that to me, I mean, you just can't argue with that. It was just so, it's right there in front of you. You're watching it happen. I mean, Frances is
That's
the real
wild.
deal. Yeah, it was really incredible.
During the communication, Frances found out why Spencer was eating fabric, and she says it's something she's heard before.
So when I spoke with the cat, he said that he was very comforted by soft fabric. It's kind of like, sucking the thumb kind of thing. But that was something that was very comforting. And I said, well, you do understand that you are destroying things that belong to mom. If she has something that she gives you specifically of hers, so it has her scent on it, will you just eat that and not the drapes? And so he said, yeah, that would work. So I asked her to sleep in a old t-shirt or tank or something, and then leave that around his toys and his sleeping area so that he got to know that this was the one item that was his.
Kind of sounds like there's a negotiation process. Is that a lot
Yes.
of animal communication when you're trying to change behavior? Talk about
Yes.
that.
Yes. I'll, currently, I understand you like to do whatever it is. And I'll say, instead of doing that, do you think you could do this? And they think about it. It's like, oh, that would be okay. Like doing walks, they're pulling and tugging and going. I say, do you think you can just stand next to your mom instead of pulling? Because she might fall. And you don't want her to get hurt, right? Oh, no, I don't want that. Okay. So I give them reasons.
Oh, and so does an animal ever said, "No, I really can't do that"? Do you have that kind of back and forth?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes because they get stubborn. I
And then what do you do?
give them another option.
Okay.
And then sometimes I remind them how lucky they are to have food in their stomach and a roof over their head and all the hugs they can get. And say, now, isn't that nice of mom? So maybe you can do this for her in return. Then it's like, I'll put it that way. Okay.
Now, I know sometimes when we have these negotiations with our kids, and okay, if you'll clean your room, then we can go to whatever place. And then, that might work for a little bit, but then they kind of backslide. Does that happen with animals?
It can. And then my client will contact me and need a little tune up here, a little reminder.
So it's a process.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it,
And it just like kids, it depends on how much they buy into it, if it really sounds like a good idea to them or not,
yeah.
The process has been a success for Spencer and Julie.
So the best news is that ever since I had my session with her,
Yeah.
Spencer has not chewed the drapes. And I'll be honest with you, for the first, I want to say 3 weeks
Hmm.
after that, I
Hmm.
did not change out the old drapes because even though I know that she was communicating with them, I didn't trust it. So I marked the drapes with a little Sharpie so that I could see where the last place was.
Yeah.
And he didn't chew it. And so 3 weeks later, I put up the new drapes and he has not touched them since. And it's been over, I want to say 6 or 7 months now, and he has not touched it. And
Wow.
it's a miracle. I mean, I'm so happy that I found Frances because she saved me a lot of money and a lot of angst with those drapes, and I'm fine to sacrifice a tank top to keep my drapes.
That's just wild. It's really just something. So you were saying you were really skeptical in the beginning, and now?
Oh, I shout from the mountaintops about Frances Greenspan. I mean, she's the real deal. I mean, you can't, I always say this, you can't argue with lived experience. You just
True.
can't. It's like, I witnessed this. I'm living it. I see it every day
Yeah.
that he is not touching those drapes. And he did it for 11 years.
Wow. That's
11
some.
years. Okay. So this is a big deal.
Yeah.
As for the tank top, well, that's another story. Julie sent me a picture and it's nearly demolished. Julie says she's thinking she might need to have Frances back to help negotiate a suitable replacement with Spencer once it's gone, so he doesn't go back to chewing the drapes. Thanks so much for listening to Rover Says. If you like the show, please rate it and share so other people who want to know how animals really think can find us. And we'd like to hear from you. Tell us what your animals are telling you or what they've told animal communicators. We drop new episodes every other Wednesday.